what's up you guys? My name is Swati and welcome back to my channel where if the book is nice, we read it twice. So fall season is here and I'm very excited about it. Since it is a period of transition, I was thinking about my bookish journey or reading books in terms of these transitions. And I would like to talk to you about books that I have changed my mind on or books that I've changed the ratings on with this video. Instead of dilly-dallying, let's just begin. I want to talk about books that I have changed the ratings of, and because of the many reasons. Sometimes you feel very excited about a particular ending of a book, and once the book ends, you are on your adrenaline high. You kind of tend to give it a higher rating than it actually deserves, and later on you rethink it. Now, since I read a number of books, these kind of things do happen, but I don't want to talk about those. I want to talk about specific books for which I have extremely changed perspective, and I will tell you why. Also, I want to mention two books in this list as honorable mentions because I have not particularly changed my thoughts on the books that I have read, but I have changed the thoughts about the authors. Since these authors are now deemed problematic for the right reasons, they are problematic. I should not say deemed, they are problematic. I don't want to give their books publicity for the simple fact that just because you're a powerful author and you have the money, it doesn't mean the rules are different for you. So for those two honorable mentions, I have first Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling. Everybody knows what J.K. Rowling has been up to, and this gives me a sour taste in my mouth. I have loved Harry Potter ever since I've read it, and I was somebody who grew along Harry Potter. So I have loved him as I have grown up as a person, and I was following the series since the second book came out. So that being said, the love for the series is not gone, but love for the author has definitely gone. So I don't want to talk about her or promote anything of her on my channel. The second book I want to talk about, I want to give the honorable mention to, is the Twilight series. Again, Stephenie Meyer has been a problematic writer who has borrowed from Native American folklores and then made it all her own and given it a commercialized spin, and even after borrowing so heavily has done nothing for Native Americans. So I think these two are my honorable mentions in this list. And those unpleasantry aside, now let's get on with the whole list. The first book that I want to talk about on this list is The Night Circus by Aaron Morgenstern. The circus arrives without warning. No announcement precedes it. It is simply there when yesterday it was not. Within the black and white striped tents, there is experience of unimaginable amazement. It is called Cirque de Riveri, but it is only open at night. But behind the facade, there is a fierce competition underway. A duel between two young magicians trained since childhood expressly for this duel from their mercurial instructors. This is a game where at the end only one of them can be left standing. I was absolutely bowled by the book. I thought that the language was exquisite, and I had never read these kind of prose before. It has combination of very compelling characters, each have very distinct personality, and all of them come together beautifully. So I mean, the writer somewhere mentioned in the book that it is sum of more than its part, and so is this book. It is sum of more than its part. So I absolutely loved it when I first read it, but then on critical inspection, what I found is there were no real duels. The synopsis hammers down the fact that there is a duel happening, and there was no formal duel. Their competition was almost missing from the book. They were one-upping each other, but the way of one-upping and not facing without actually facing each other was weird, and it at the end of it became my first ever fantasy romance. And when I read it, I gave it a lower rating, around 3 star, because of these aspects. Eventually this book was just a fantasy romance for me. That being said, nowadays I have started loving fantasy romance, and that is a reason why I wanna up the star rating for this back to 5 stars, because my mind has been changed for this book, and now I think I wanna reread it again with the expectations that I currently have, and I wanna enjoy it more than I did previously. Previously, I absolutely looked down upon romance books, and now that I digest them better, I think I will love this one. The next book I want to talk about is Every Heart a Doorway series. Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. This is first book of the Wayward Children series. As you can see, it's a slim one. Now, there is a protagonist in this first book named Nancy, who has just joined the coveted school of wayward children, where all the children who has fallen into a portal to go to their different magical lands, and somehow they tumble back because magical lands never take up these children. They have very little use for these children, and they have to come back. And when they come back, they are absolutely depressed because they always thought they belonged to these magical lands, and that's where their real place to be was. And that being said, since it was such a small one, my gripe with the book was that it was too small, and it went ahead telling and not exactly showing in the books what we were talking about, and full setting rather than a magical land setting. So all in all together, I had very mixed reaction for the first book in the series. So I had given it 3 stars, but over the passage of time, what I have realized is that I have gone back to this book again and again, and I have always been excited about the new release in the series coming every January. So I think I will bump this star rating again up to 5 star, because Seanan McGuire's writing is brilliant. And that being said, even if it is doing a lot of telling and not showing, these books are very different than any book that I have read ever. So I have warmed up to this series, and slowly I have realized that this is a 5-star series for me, something that I will always keep on my bookshelf and go back to very regularly to enjoy the world even more. The next book I want to talk about is Rupi Kaur's Milk and Honey. Now everybody and their mother loves this book. This is very a feminist collection of poetry. It deals with grief, sorrow, relationships, abandonment, etc. And she has a very feminist take on the topics, and I have loved the prose ever since I have read them. That being said, I have recently picked, within last 2 years, I have started reading poetry for myself, and what I have realized is that more poetry that I read, more I discover that Rupi Kaur's writing is respect, if you call them poetry. Yes, I enjoyed the book. Yes, I still enjoy the book, but some of it is just fluff and gimmick. Now don't get me wrong, these are very harsh words, but what I'm saying is, any sentence that has mild intelligence in it, used with couple of extra full stops, kind of start becoming a poetry. I have found a lot of these sentences in Rupi Kaur's poem. For example, I feel like a lily pad. It is not a poem, it's just a sentence, and also a sentence which doesn't mean anything. So among the profound and hard-hitting, concentrated, crisp words there is some fluff, and I think that's why, because of the fluff, I want to bring down the rating from 5 star to 3 star for this book. The next book I want to talk about is The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. This is a middle grade book, again with very beautiful prose, and I absolutely loved it. And the story was very plot heavy, as well as it attracted me towards continue reading it throughout. And I think initially I gave it 4 stars because I was just getting into middle grade, and I kind of dragged myself, because if a book is intentionally designed as a middle grade, they tend to use simpler language, and uh, the plot is not as as complicated, and there is a lot of repetition by design in the book so that a kid can understand the book. But that being said, now I find this take on fairy tales to be very refreshing, and now I think that I have more middle grades under my belt now, and as an adult now I have more middle grades under my belt, so I can truly say that this is one of the best middle grades I have read in within few years, and I have absolutely loved it. So I'll bump its rating up to 5 star. The next book I want to talk about is The Alchemist by Paul Coelho. Now this is one of those books which can be considered a spiritual lesson. This is a book who, when it came out and everybody read it, instantly gave it 5 stars. And I did too. I was somebody who was just bowled over of magic, mysticism and wisdom together formed a delightful story. Now, as somebody who revisits the story, I kind of feel like it's nothing but just a romantic story. It's a romance book which kind of gives you a vague idea of believing in what you want to achieve, and no concrete direction to actually doing the stuff and getting things done. So I think the idea that the whole world conspires to give you what you want makes you a very lazy person, and the motivations are upside down. Yes, you need some days where you need that pick me up of somebody telling you to do so, but instead of trusting the universe, I think we should trust ourselves in making the things happen that we want. So that being said, the whole philosophy of the book is kind of redundant, and I kind of now find this book very tedious and oily. So I bumped this down to 3 stars. So now 3 stars is not a bad rating by any means, but it's not the showstopper 5-star rating that I had given this previously. The next book I want to talk about is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. Now this is one of those cases that when I read this one, I thought that there was no plot in the book. I kind of didn't see the point, and the ending was very slow and boring for me, and I had given it 3 star, and I could not understand why this book was so hyped. Later on, many years later, when I saw the movie, I kind of did understand the point a bit more. But I think recently I have started falling in love with this book again. This book comes back to my memory again and again, and how the passivity of the book was the actual point of the plot is something that I am realizing just now. How even in time of despair or ridiculousness, people since they are conditioned into passivity, people always react with that passivity towards all the things that's wrong, just because you have seen it happen since your childhood. So this whole concept was so nuanced and highbrow for me that I could not understand it when I read this book as a young person. But now I'm not a kid anymore, and I get all the things that this book was packing and much more. The reread of this one is due, and I have bumped this from 3 star to 5 star. That is how much I have thought about this book even after so many years of reading. The next book I want to talk about is You by Caroline Kipnis. Now this was a book that I was head over heels with when it came out. I loved the Joe Goldberg character, and best part, he was played by one of my favorite actors on the TV series, Netflix TV series, and I love the TV series as well. now 4 books down the line, I thought this year we got a 4th book down the line, and everybody has been saying that the other books are not very good and they were repetitive. So I didn't want to be in that repetitive mindset, because it was too much to previously as well. So this time around I decided, no, I will read all the 4 books and get back to visiting Joe Goldberg, since I have loved his character so much on my first reading. And I was surprised when I reread the first book that I did not like his perspective anymore. Generally, the stalkerish and problematic men tend to cross all the lines which they shouldn't, and we as a society kind of enables them to do so. And nowadays, that I think it's not great to glorify such characters. And I know that it is just a book, but that being said, the way it made me feel was so negative and disheartened that I did not continue with the second and third book, and I did not pick up the 4th book as well. So I am bumping the rating down for this book from 4 star to 2 star, and I don't think I will continue with this perspective anymore. Next book I want to talk about is 7.5 Death of Evelyn Hardcastle. Now this was a book that I initially gave 4 star, and I was so happy with the story. The book is, there are 8 who have witnessed this murder, and you are the detective who wakes up in each and every one of their bodies and relive the whole day to actually figure out what happened. Now the concept was a little confusing, but the way it was executed was even more confusing, and that is why I bumped down a star from 5 star to 4 star. There was some problematic representation of a fat person as well, and there was definitely something called fat phobia in the pages, and all in all, that's why I gave it 4 star. But I have thought about this book since the day I have read it. I have put it in n number of my thriller recommendations and best books recommendations videos, etc., and I just can't seem to stop thinking about this book. Even though if I want to be objective and I can point out some negatives about this book, I should be honest with everybody. I think it's a 5 star. It takes up the amount of mental space a 5 star does in my head and heart. So this is definitely a 5 star for me. The last book, definitely not the least in my list, is Alice in Wonderland. So when I first read Alice in Wonderland, it was some few excerpts from the book, and it was in my compulsory English education in my school, and I absolutely loved it. So then I decided, when I was a young person, I decided I will read the whole book. Now that's not too big a feat to achieve. It's a very simply short book, and I went through it on a day. That book itself did not prove to be as great as I expected it to be. Now as a grown up, I understand the whole nonsense words and absurdist writing style better now, and that's why I think Alice in Wonderland has become one of my favorite books of all time. Heck, I could say that it is my favorite book of all time, period. I have multiple editions of Alice in Wonderland, and I love it to no bounds. After few days of reading, I again want to go back to Alice in Wonderland and read it again. I think it is a masterpiece. It is amazing absurdist literature, and it has amazing verses in it, and the way it plays with all the gimmicks and the shenanigans and the beauty of characters, I think Alice in Wonderland is the one to love. Although Alice is not a very likable character, I have loved her ever since I have started collecting her, and every time I reread this book, I love it more and more. So this is, I think, 6 star out of 5 star if you ask me. These are all the books that I wanted to talk to you about this in this video. Like and subscribe if you like what I do over here. I really appreciate each and every one of you who is taking out time to actually see my videos. I hope you enjoy it. I'll see you with another one soon. Bye bye.